The chain screamed before the dragon did. Not metal. Not energy. Something older. The sound vibrated through vacuum and stone alike, through the hollowed bones of the planet-sized skull that served as the Galactic Council's ceremonial chamber. It wasn't a room. It was a monument. Carved from the fossilized remains of a cosmic leviathan that had once consumed stars. And tonight, beneath its vaulted ribs, another monster waited. Suspended in the void beyond the chamber's open edge, bound by gravitational tethers and stellar-forged restraints, the dragon beast stirred. Its body coiled through fractured space like a living constellation. Scales shimmered with collapsed galaxies. Each breath bent starlight around it. When it exhaled, 3 nearby moons shifted orbit. The council did not look at it directly. They never did. They watched through filtered projections, through quantum-dampened lenses. Direct observation had driven lesser species to madness. 1,000 representatives filled the chamber tiers, armored diplomats, robed theocrats, machine intelligences housed in crystalline pillars. All silent. All afraid. The ritual platform at the center of the chamber hummed as containment fields activated. "Proceed," intoned High Arbiter Kayla, his voice amplified across gravitational frequencies. The massive doors behind the platform opened. Human guards escorted the offering forward. Not struggling. Not pleading. Walking. He was unarmed. Unarmored. Dressed in simple dark fabric provided by the council. His name had not been announced. It did not matter. To the council, he was not a person. He was insurance. Whispers rippled through the chamber. Humans are unstable. They resist psychic domination. They survived 3 extinction cycles on their homeworld. Perhaps the beast will find novelty. The human stopped at the center of the ritual platform. Energy restraints flickered to life around his wrists and ankles, not tight enough to harm, but enough to signal inevitability. Beyond the chamber's open edge, the dragon beast's eye opened. It was not an eye as mortals understood it. It was a lens of compressed space-time. It turned. And fixed upon the human. Gravity shifted. Several council members collapsed to their knees as local physics warped under the dragon's attention. Stars outside the chamber dimmed briefly. The human tilted his head upward. He squinted slightly against the stellar glare radiating from the beast's form. He did not scream. He did not beg. He studied it. The dragon beast uncoiled slowly, vast body eclipsing constellations as it drifted closer to the chamber's boundary. The chains binding it tightened, glowing with ancient runes older than most civilizations present. For millennia, the ritual had been simple. Offer tribute. Appease the beast. Maintain cosmic stability. When tribute failed, sectors vanished. Entire civilizations reduced to gravitational static. The council had learned obedience. High Arbiter Kayla raised a trembling hand. "Great Devourer," he proclaimed, voice reverberating through lead dimensions, "we present this offering in recognition of the imbalance caused by our recent expansions. May this tribute restore equilibrium." The dragon beast inhaled. Time stuttered. Several council members experienced flashes of alternate futures, brief glimpses of their species erased, their stars collapsing inward. The human felt it too. The pressure. The pull of something ancient evaluating him on a level deeper than flesh. His restraints flickered as gravitational flux spiked. The dragon lowered its colossal head toward the platform. Closer. Closer. Its presence alone fractured the chamber's protective fields, sending arcs of distorted light across the skull temple walls. The human's hair lifted slightly in the shifting gravity. He did not look away. Their gazes locked. For a fraction of a second. The universe paused. Not metaphorically. Literally. Background radiation froze mid-vibration. Distant pulsars halted between beats. The council did not understand what they were witnessing. The dragon's pupil narrowed. Its chains vibrated, not from strain. From interference. The human's heart continued beating at a steady pace. 1, 2, 3. The beast's attention sharpened. It probed, not with fire or claws, but with something older. A scan across probability threads. Across causal layers. And something resisted. Not a shield. Not a weapon. An anchor. The human exhaled slowly. "You don't want this," he said quietly. The words were not amplified. Yet they carried. The dragon's eye flared brighter. The restraints around the human flickered violently as gravitational harmonics destabilized. A crack split across one of the dragon's chains. High Arbiter Kayla staggered backward. "That is impossible," one technocrat gasped. The bindings are calibrated to suppress cosmic entities. Another chain fractured. The sound was not physical. It was conceptual. Like a law of physics bending. The dragon did not roar. It hesitated. In thousands of recorded rituals across eons, it had never hesitated. The human took one small step forward on the platform. The energy restraints flickered again. And dissolved completely. Gasps echoed across the chamber tiers. Security fields attempted to re-engage, but spatial distortion rippled outward from the platform, disrupting control systems. The dragon lowered its massive head until it hovered just beyond the chamber's threshold. Close enough that its breath bent the light around the human's silhouette. For a heartbeat, the council believed the beast would consume him. Instead, reality flickered. A council delegate on the upper tier blinked. And saw himself standing in an empty chamber filled with dust. Another saw stars replaced by void. Then everything snapped back. The dragon's gaze shifted. Not away. Beyond. Past the human. Toward the council. The temperature in the chamber dropped several degrees as gravitational pressure reoriented. High Arbiter Kayla felt it first. The attention. The evaluation. The human did not move. He stood at the center of the platform, now free of restraints, looking up at the cosmic entity with something disturbingly close to recognition. The dragon beast drew back slightly. Not in retreat. In reconsideration. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, the devourer did not open its jaws. It turned its head. Toward the ones who had made the offering. The chains binding it trembled violently. One more cracked. The council chamber shook as if reality itself had shifted weight. And somewhere, deep in the fabric of spacetime, something ancient chose not to feed. The first thing to break was not the chains. It was continuity. High Arbiter Kayla raised his hand to issue a command. And found himself already lowering it. A heartbeat later, he was raising it again. The motion looped twice before stabilizing. Murmurs erupted across the chamber tiers. Temporal drift. Impossible inside a council ritual site. The skull temple had been engineered specifically to dampen paradox fluctuations. Yet reality stuttered again. A crystalline delegate flickered into static for half a second, then returned, fractured along hairline seams that hadn't existed before. "What is happening?" one technocrat whispered. No one answered. At the center platform, the human stood unbound. The energy restraints lay dissolved into faint vapor trails, their containment equations simply gone. Not overloaded. Not shattered. Deleted. Beyond the chamber's open edge, the dragon beast's colossal eye narrowed further. It did not blink. It recalculated. Galactic sensors registered spikes across gravitational spectrums. Probability waves oscillated. Background radiation fluctuated as if the universe itself were adjusting its footing. The beast extended a tendril of perception toward the human again. This time, more carefully. The human didn't flinch. He tilted his head slightly, studying the massive cosmic entity as though examining something familiar but misplaced. "You don't want this," he repeated. His voice carried, not louder, but deeper. As if spoken along layers of reality rather than through air. The dragon's chains vibrated violently. A third shackle cracked. High Arbiter Kayla staggered back from the edge of the platform. "Stabilize the bindings," he shouted. Control pylons flared to life along the chamber walls. Ancient glyphs ignited, drawing power from nearby stars to reinforce the gravitational tethers. For a moment, the chains brightened. For a moment, stability returned. Then, the human took another step forward. The ritual platform beneath him shimmered, its geometric patterns warping into unfamiliar shapes. Council instrumentation attempted to categorize the distortion. "Error. Error. Error. Run full spectrum analysis," barked a machine intelligence delegate. "We are," came the panicked response from the lower tier. "It's not energy, it's alignment shift." The dragon's pupil dilated. Not with hunger. With recognition. Fragments of something ancient surfaced in its awareness. A pattern it had encountered before. Not in this cycle. Not in this universe. Long ago. Before this version of spacetime. The dragon's breath altered. Instead of pulling gravity inward, it smoothed it. The crushing pressure that had pinned lesser species to their knees eased slightly around the human, but intensified around the council tiers. Several delegates collapsed as localized gravitational fields reoriented toward them. "This is a malfunction," Kayla insisted, though doubt had crept into his tone. "The beast must consume to restore balance." The dragon's gaze snapped toward him. The entire chamber trembled. For an instant, Kayla saw something else layered over reality. The skull temple in ruins. The council tiers empty. Stars outside flickering out like dying embers. He gasped and stumbled backward. The vision vanished. The human spoke again. You've been feeding it fear. The words struck like a tuning fork against the chamber's fabric. One of the remaining chains shattered completely. Not exploding. Unraveling. The broken links dissolved into drifting threads of warped light. Gasps filled the chamber. The dragon did not surge forward. It did not lunge. It simply hovered closer, its massive form blotting out the constellations behind it. Scanning. Probing. The human felt the contact, not as pain, but as pressure along memory. Images flashed behind his eyes. Firestorms. Frozen oceans. Civilizations rising and falling. A universe collapsing inward. And then beginning again. He did not recoil. Instead, something within him answered. Not a weapon. Not a shield. A stabilizing frequency. Across the chamber, time fractured again. A delegate blinked and saw themselves aged centuries. Another saw their species erased from historical archives. A third saw a galaxy without a council at all. Then everything snapped back to present. The dragon recoiled slightly, not in fear, but in surprise. The human was not prey. He was constant. A fixed point in a shifting equation. The beast turned its attention fully upon him now. The gravitational tethers flared one last time as control systems desperately attempted to recalibrate. It was too late. The remaining chains fractured in unison. Silence fell. The dragon was no longer bound. And yet, it did not attack. It pivoted. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward the council tiers. Shock rippled through the chamber. No, Kayla breathed. The dragon's massive form coiled partially around the skull temple, its body eclipsing half the visible sky. Gravity deepened across the upper tiers, forcing delegates to cling to their seats. The human remained steady at the center platform. Reality around him shimmered faintly, but held. Unbroken. The dragon lowered its head again. Not toward the human. Toward the council. For the first time in ritual history, the beast did not demand tribute. It evaluated the ones who had offered it. The human's voice cut through the trembling chamber. You don't need them to balance anything. The dragon's eye flared with something new. Understanding. Across the galaxy, distant sensors registered a sudden drop in instability metrics. Energy fluctuations across multiple sectors smoothed. Trade routes that had suffered unpredictable gravitational surges stabilized. Stars previously on the brink of collapse leveled. The council did not notice. They were too busy watching the beast's gaze settle upon them. High Arbiter Kayla felt the weight of it, ancient and immeasurable. You misunderstand the ritual, he managed hoarsely. The human looked up at the dragon again. No, he said softly. You do. The chamber lights flickered. Space itself seemed to inhale. And for the first time in millennia, the dragon did not hunger. It remembered. The dragon did not move. And that was more terrifying than if it had. Unbound, it coiled around the skull temple like a second horizon, its vast body eclipsing star systems beyond the chamber's edge. Scales shimmered with collapsed nebulae. Gravity bent around its form in obedient arcs. But it did not attack. It watched. High Arbiter Kayla clutched the railing of his tier as localized gravity intensified beneath him. Several delegates were already pinned to the floor, their atmospheric fields flickering under pressure. Re-engage the containment lattice. Kayla shouted. Technocrats scrambled, fingers dancing across holographic control matrices. No response, one replied, voice shaking. The lattice equations are being rewritten. By what? The answer came from a machine intelligence pillar, its crystalline core flickering erratically. Not by force, it said slowly. By alignment. At the center platform, the human stood alone. No restraints. No visible shield. Yet reality around him no longer fractured. The stuttering time loops that had plagued the chamber now stabilized in a clean, steady rhythm. He looked small beneath the dragon's looming presence. And yet, the distortion centered on him. The dragon's immense eye narrowed once more, not in aggression, but in focus. It projected. Not fire. Not gravity. Memory. Across the chamber, delegates were seized by visions they had never authorized access to. Ancient archives burst open in their minds. Before the council. Before the rituals. Before even the dragon's chains. A different era. A different universe. They saw a cosmos collapsing inward, not from war or entropy, but from imbalance. Reality itself thinning like worn fabric. Dimensions slipping out of phase. And within that unraveling, figures. Bipedal. Fragile. Human. Not this civilization. Not this earth. Older. Standing at the threshold of universal reset. Kayla staggered as the vision intensified. "What is this?" he whispered. The machine intelligence pillar processed at impossible speeds. "These are pre-cycle records," it said in disbelief. "Data fragments we classified as myth." The vision shifted. The collapsing universe did not end in void. It compressed. And then expanded. A new cosmos blossomed from the remnants of the old. Stars ignited. Physics recalibrated. And scattered across the newborn galaxy. Humans. Not conquerors. Not rulers. Anchors. Points of continuity bridging collapse and rebirth. The vision snapped away. Delegates gasped, some collapsing fully as gravity stabilized just enough to let them breathe. The dragon's voice entered the chamber. Not sound. Not language. A resonance that bypassed translation systems and spoke directly to cognition. "You call it sacrifice." The chamber trembled. It was never hunger. The human looked up calmly. The dragon's eye shifted toward him. It was assessment. A wave of comprehension rippled outward. The ritual was never about appeasement. It was a test. The dragon had been created, bound, to consume unstable realities before they tore themselves apart. When civilizations expanded recklessly, when power destabilized causality, it intervened. And for millennia, the council had interpreted that intervention as wrath. So they fed it fear. Fed it tribute. Fed it death. But fear was not what the dragon sought. It sought stability. The human stepped forward to the very edge of the platform. Space warped slightly around his outline, but did not break. "You've been looking for imbalance," he said softly. The dragon's pupil dilated. Across the council tiers, delegates flickered again, but not randomly. This time, the distortion centered on the highest seats of authority. Kayla saw himself seated in infinite variations of the chamber, each one ruling through increasing control, increasing expansion, increasing instability. In some, stars shattered under overexploitation. In others, entire species were erased for political convenience. Every path converged on one result. Fracture. The dragon shifted its gaze back to the human. For the first time, it lowered its massive head, not in preparation to devour, but in acknowledgement. Gravity around the human stabilized fully now. No distortion. No flicker. He was constant. An axis around which reality balanced. One of the council's elder archivists, ancient and trembling, whispered from a lower tier. The old fragments, they spoke of a continuity species. No one responded. The dragon's resonance deepened. "You are not prey." The words echoed across lead dimensions. "You are remnant." The human did not appear surprised. "We survive," he replied simply. A final vision burst across the chamber, this one not ancient, but possible. The council continuing its rituals. Sacrifices escalating. Fear deepening. Eventually, pushing the universe to the brink once more. And the dragon. Forced to choose between intervention and collapse. The vision dissolved. The dragon turned fully toward the council tiers. Several delegates screamed as gravity intensified briefly, not enough to kill, but enough to silence. The human remained untouched. The dragon coiled slightly, massive form shielding the platform unintentionally. Or perhaps intentionally. The human glanced up. "You don't need to consume," he said. The dragon's eye flared brighter than before. "No." A final chain fragment, long cracked but still clinging conceptually, disintegrated entirely. The dragon was no longer bound by ritual. It was no longer misinterpreted hunger. It was free to judge. And its gaze settled, not on the human, but on those who had tried to offer him. High Arbiter Kayla felt the weight of cosmic evaluation press against him. For the first time since the ritual began. He understood. They had not been appeasing a monster. They had been misreading a guardian. And they had just tried to sacrifice the one thing it recognized as balance. The dragon lowered its head one final time. This time, it knelt. Before the human. Across the chamber, every delegate froze. Reality held steady. For the first time in the council's history. The devourer bowed. Nothing in the council's recorded history prepared them for what happened next. The dragon knelt. Not fully, Its body was too vast to conform to mortal architecture, but its colossal head lowered until its brow hovered just above the ritual platform. A gesture older than language. Acknowledgement. Shock rippled through the chamber tiers. High Arbiter Kayla felt something colder than fear settle in his chest. Loss of control. For millennia, the Council had framed the dragon as a catastrophe to be managed. A cosmic predator to be placated with ritual and sacrifice. But predators did not kneel. Guardians did not devour without cause. And judges did not kneel to pray. The human stood motionless before the dragon's lowered gaze. The chamber's fractured gravitational field smoothed further, aligning around him like iron filings around a magnetic axis. You were never meant to be fed, the human said quietly. The dragon's presence deepened, not in volume, but in density. A pressure that folded space inward without tearing it. I was meant to measure. The words did not echo. They settled. Across the tiers, delegates felt their own memories pulled forward, not by force, but by exposure. Secret expansions. Weaponized star cores. Manipulated trade collapses designed to destabilize rival systems. The Council had grown powerful not through balance, but through pressure. Fear had been currency. And the dragon had been their excuse. Kayla staggered as the chamber floor shifted beneath him, not physically, but probabilistically. Alternate versions of himself flickered into view again. In some, he doubled down, ordering fleets to fire on the dragon. In those futures, entire sectors folded into gravitational scars. In others, he fled. Those futures ended in fragmentation and civil war. Only one path remained stable. Yield. The dragon lifted its head slightly, and the skull temple groaned as layered realities peeled back like transparent sheets. The Council saw beyond the chamber walls. Beyond their star charts. They saw the galaxy's gravitational web. Thin in places. Frayed in others. Recent expansions had strained cosmic equilibrium. And the ritual sacrifices, meant to appease the dragon, had masked the symptoms, not the cause. The human stepped closer to the dragon's brow. Security fields attempted to reactivate around the platform. They failed. Not destroyed. Unnecessary. You've been responding to instability, he said. Not creating it. The dragon's eye flared. Yes. The chamber shook, not violently, but rhythmically, like a heartbeat synchronizing. Several council members screamed as their personal shielding collapsed under the weight of rebalancing gravitational tides. But no one died. The dragon was not punishing. It was recalibrating. Kayla found himself forced to his knees as gravity pressed him downward, not crushing, but undeniable. You would judge us, he whispered hoarsely. The dragon's presence enveloped the chamber. You offered Anchor as sacrifice. The statement carried neither rage nor mercy. Only fact. The human extended his hand. For a moment, the council thought he would command the dragon. Control it. Weaponize it. Instead, he placed his palm gently against the dragon's forehead. The contact sent a wave outward, not destructive, but harmonic. Across the galaxy, unstable star systems steadied. Anomalous wormholes collapsed safely rather than catastrophically. A pulsar on the brink of tearing its sector apart stabilized into predictable rotation. Back in the chamber, layered realities snapped into singular alignment. No more flicker. No more loops. Just one timeline. The dragon exhaled. The breath carried not fire, but compression. Energy drawn from overextended council war engines, those hidden, experimental star harnessing constructs, collapsed harmlessly into inert mass. Secret weapons died quietly. Fleet commanders across distant systems stared in disbelief as their most unstable projects simply ceased functioning. In the chamber, council power indicators dimmed across the upper tiers. Kayla felt it. Authority draining, not through overthrow, but through exposure. You strip us of defense, he said, voice trembling. The human looked over his shoulder. No, he replied calmly. It's stripping you of imbalance. The dragon shifted its immense coils around the skull temple. But instead of crushing it, it shielded it. Reality outside the chamber rippled once more, not fracturing, but shedding excess strain. The ritual site stabilized into something it had never been before. Not a sacrificial altar. A fulcrum. The dragon's voice resonated again. Ritual complete. Shock spread across the council. No tribute was consumed, whispered one delegate. The dragon's eye shifted toward him. Correct. Kayla struggled to rise but could not. You would abandon us? He asked. The dragon's gaze drifted toward the human. Balance does not require obedience. The human withdrew his hand. The chamber light steadied fully now. No distortion. No gravitational oppression. Just clarity. The dragon began to uncoil, not aggressively, but deliberately. It did not lunge at the council. It did not devour. It simply turned its immense form away from the skull temple's open edge. Preparing to depart. Kayla's voice cracked. Wait. The dragon paused. The human remained silent. Kayla swallowed. If we are no longer to appease you, what are we to do? The dragon's answer rippled through every tear. Understand what you expand. The human added quietly. Stop feeding fear to things you don't understand. The dragon's eye lingered on the council one final time. Not as predator. Not as executioner. As witness. Then it shifted closer to the human. Not towering over him. Beside him. The chamber trembled once more as space-time folded outward, not collapsing, but opening. A corridor of stable cosmic fabric stretched into the void beyond. The dragon was not fleeing. It was repositioning. The human looked back once at the council. You don't get to call us expendable anymore, he said. The corridor brightened. And as the dragon stepped into it, reality did not shatter. It aligned. The council chamber remained intact. But diminished. For the first time in its history, it had been judged. And spared. The dragon did not vanish. It repositioned. That was the word the human would later use when scholars tried to describe what happened next. From the skull temple's open edge, delegates watched as space-time parted, not ripped, not burned, but folded with deliberate precision. The dragon's immense form moved through the corridor of stable reality like a continent drifting across an unseen ocean. The human walked beside it. Not dragged. Not carried. Walking. Behind them, the corridor sealed without distortion. No gravitational shockwave. No collapsing stars. Just absence. Silence filled the council chamber. For several seconds, no one moved. Then the instruments began reporting. Across the galaxy, anomaly alerts vanished from tactical screens. A red dwarf system on the brink of runaway flare stabilized. 2 rival empires preparing to weaponize a shared wormhole found the aperture, gone. Closed cleanly, safely. 3 unstable neutron stars, previously predicted to collapse into cascading singularities, corrected course into predictable decay. Entire sectors that had flickered with probability turbulence smoothed into coherent spacetime. High Arbiter Kayla stared at the data feed with hollow eyes. It's not destroying anything, whispered a technocrat. It's removing excess strain, replied the machine intelligence pillar, voice steadier now. Where expansion exceeded equilibrium. Another delegate swallowed. We built our power on that strain. No one contradicted him. In orbit above the Skull Temple, Council warships attempted to recalibrate their most advanced systems. Gravitational cannons powered down automatically. Singularity engines, once the crown jewels of deterrence, refused to initialize. Not damaged. Realigned. Their equations no longer compatible with current cosmic constants. A fleet admiral's voice crackled over emergency channels. High Arbiter, our weapons grids are offline. Kayla closed his eyes briefly. For how long? A pause. Indefinitely. Back in the chamber, delegates began speaking at once, accusations, fear, disbelief. They've disarmed us. They've crippled our sovereignty. They've stabilized the galaxy, the archivist interrupted quietly. The chamber fell silent. Across the main display, a real-time map of galactic energy fluctuations glowed. For the first time in recorded history, the instability index read near zero. Trade routes cleared. Migration corridors opened. Border tensions eased, not because of treaties, but because the invisible pressure fueling conflict had evaporated. Kayla sank into his seat. They did not conquer us, he murmured. They removed our excuse. Light bent once more at the chamber's edge. A ripple. Not violent. Predictable. The dragon reappeared, no longer bound, no longer framed as prisoner. It did not coil around the Skull Temple. It hovered at a respectful distance in open space. The human stood on a projection platform extending into vacuum, held in place by localized field generators. Council security forces twitched nervously, but did not fire. The dragon's presence felt different now. Not hunger. Not judgment. Balance. The human's voice carried across the chamber through amplified relay. We're not here to rule you. Kayla looked up slowly. Then why return? The human glanced briefly toward the dragon's massive eye before answering. Because balance isn't absence of power. It's responsible use of it. The dragon's voice resonated through the chamber one final time. Expansion without understanding invites collapse. The words embedded themselves into the council's collective consciousness like new laws of physics. A junior delegate swallowed. You could have erased us. The human's expression was calm. Maybe, he said. But that wouldn't have fixed the problem. Behind him, the dragon shifted slightly, not looming, not shielding, simply present. For the first time, the council saw it not as devourer, but as guardian. And it stood beside a human. Not above. Not below. Beside. Days later, official doctrine updates began circulating across the galaxy. Council Emergency Amendment 771A. Ritual appeasement procedures terminated. Sacrificial practices permanently banned. All singularity weapon projects suspended. Expansion proposals subject to cross-species stability review. And one more classification, entered quietly but spreading faster than any decree. Humans, reality anchor species. Not conquerors. Not destroyers. Anchors. Species capable of surviving cosmic resets. Species whose presence aligned unstable systems. Markets adjusted overnight. Diplomatic channels reopened. Several minor civilizations, once forced into tribute obligations, found their autonomy restored. The Council's authority did not vanish. It changed. Fear no longer justified its reach. In orbit above Earth, telescopes recorded something unprecedented. The dragon resting at the edge of the Sol system. Not coiled to strike. Coiled to observe. Human fleets did not surround it. They did not attempt to chain it. They simply adjusted orbital patterns to accommodate its gravitational influence. On a quiet observation deck overlooking Earth, the same human stood with hands clasped behind his back. A younger officer approached hesitantly. Sir, what are we calling it now? The human looked up at the massive silhouette against the stars. We're not calling it anything, he replied. Why not? He smiled faintly. Because it's not ours. As if in response, the dragon's eye flared gently, no distortion, no shockwave. Just awareness. Across the galaxy, stability metrics held steady. For the first time in centuries. No ritual was scheduled. No tribute prepared. No fear calculated. The Council had offered a human a sacrifice. Reality had corrected the error. And the universe, at last, stopped trembling.